The sword that waited. The sword stood alone in the center of the arena, buried in stone that no weapon, machine, or mind had ever cracked. For 300 years, aliens of all kinds had come to lift it. Giants with arms like tree trunks, creatures of pure energy, even beings that could bend time. All had tried. All had failed. It was called the Sword of Zar'Kai, the weapon of the first flame, forged before the stars were born, they said. The legend was simple. Whoever lifts it will rule the galaxy, not by war, but by right. And so the council built this place, the arena of trials, where champions were tested, and the sword remained untouched, unmoved, unbroken. Today was different. The stands were full. Alien races gathered in silence. Flying drones recorded every angle. War leaders watched from floating balconies. One by one, this cycle's chosen warriors stepped forward. The first was a four-armed beast from Velkara Prime. His armor was made from meteor bone. He screamed his name, Krather, and grabbed the sword. Nothing happened. He roared, pulling harder, his muscles tearing the stone floor apart. Still, the sword did not move even a hair. Krather fell back, defeated. The crowd hissed, unimpressed. Then came a glowing priestess from the Nebula cult. She hovered over the stone, her fingers dancing in the air, whispering in a forgotten language. The sword shivered, just slightly, but then dimmed. Rejected again, dozens more. Tried, each failed. Each walked away with shame in their eyes, and the crowd grew restless. The Counselor of Stars stood and declared, "It has been 3 centuries. The sword will never choose again." But then, a door opened at the edge of the arena, and out stepped a human. He was small compared to the others. No armor, no weapons, not even a translator chip in his ear, just a brown maintenance suit with oil stains. He blinked against the sun, confused. 1,000 alien eyes turned to him. Some laughed, some cursed, some watched in silence. Who allowed? "This?" A voice from the council shouted. "I don't know." Another answered, "Is this part of the show?" Someone joked. The human walked slowly forward. His name was Eli Grant. He wasn't a soldier or a chosen warrior. He was a janitor. He had been fixing a light panel on deck 3 of a cargo ship when something glitched. Now he was standing here, in the center of the galaxy's most sacred place, and staring at a sword he had never seen before. He scratched his head. "Where the hell am I?" he whispered. His voice echoed in the silence. A drone floated toward him, scanning. No data found. Unregistered human. Low intelligence species. No threat. It beeped and flew away. Eli looked around. Is this a prank? Did Charlie do this? I swear, if this is about the vending machine. He stepped closer to the sword. Everyone watched. No one moved. Eli placed his hand on the hilt. Warm. Not hot. Not cold. Just alive. It felt like it was breathing. He smiled nervously. Okay, big stick in a rock. Let's see what happens. And then the stone cracked. Not a little, not a hairline, but split in half with a sound like thunder across the stars. A blinding golden light shot into the sky. Ships in orbit powered down. Gravity blinked across. 3 moons. The sword rose, not just from the stone, but from time itself, and floated into Eli's hand. The arena fell silent. Even the wind stopped moving. Eli stood, holding the sword in one hand. Its blade pulsed with energy that had not existed for millions of years. I didn't mean to, he began. The Counselor of Stars stood trembling. It has chosen. He whispered, ... a human? The ground shook. Far away in the void, an ancient beacon blinked awake. Across the galaxy, sleeping gods opened their eyes. And Eli, the janitor, the nobody, stood at the center of history, with the sword. in his hand, and everything changed. The day the stars stopped, the stars were always bright above the arena of trials. But after Eli Grant lifted the sword, they did something they had never done before. They went dark across 10,000 worlds. Satellites blinked off, lights failed, machines froze, spaceports halted, nav chips glitched. In the sky, the stars themselves seemed to flicker, not like dying lights, but like eyes that had just opened. On Earth, birds stopped mid-flight. On Kazari Prime, oceans stood still. On the frozen moon of Drax, a child pointed upward and said, "The stars are scared." And in the middle of it all stood Eli, the human who had never won a single trophy in life, the human who now held the sword every alien god had failed to lift. He didn't know what was happening. He didn't understand the language in the air or why the sky was glowing. But deep inside him, behind the memories of vending machines, oil stains, and late rent, something had awakened. "Put the sword down," shouted a guard with a laser staff. "Drop it now," yelled another. Eli stepped back. I didn't do anything," he stammered, but the sword burned brighter in his hand, like it was protecting him. A wave of energy exploded outwards, knocking the guards away without a touch. Alien leaders began to panic. Seal the arena. Alert the High Council. Activate the shields. But it was too late. Above them, the skies turned gold, and a single, massive rune burned into the clouds. A symbol none had seen for 100,000 years. One that only the Elders of Flame had recorded. The Counselor of Stars, older than most planets, fell to his knees. "The flame has returned," he whispered. The prophecy was real. Far away, on a secret station orbiting a dead sun, an old alien opened his eye. After 5 centuries of silence, he smiled. "The human has touched the core," he whispered. "Let it begin." Back in the arena, Eli was running, sword in hand, breath fast, heart wild. He didn't know who to trust. Drones chased him. Guards aimed plasma at his back. A voice crackled through the air. "Capture the human alive. Terminate if necessary." Terminate? Eli shouted. What kind of game is this? He ducked behind a column as beams blasted around him. The sword whispered in his mind, not in words, but in feelings. Move left, dodge, jump. And he did, like he had trained for this his whole life. He reached the outer door, and that's when he saw her, an alien girl with glowing blue eyes. Holding a dagger and a strange box, she didn't move to attack. Instead, she whispered something into the box. The door opened. Eli stared, confused. "Are you going to stab me or help me?" The girl tilted her head. "You don't know, do you?" "Know what?" She stared at the sword. "You're the one it waited for." "Waited?" "I was fixing an bathroom 2 hours ago." "My name is Vala," she said quickly. "There's no time. Come with me if you want answers." Eli hesitated, then nodded. She led him into the dark hallway beyond the arena, into tunnels no one remembered. As they ran, the sword hummed. It began to glow not with gold, but blue. Vala gasped. "It's responding to the truth," she said, almost in awe. "What truth?" Eli asked, out of breath. "That the legends were wrong," she said. "The sword never chose warriors. It chose those with grief." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council sat in shadows, whispering through holograms. "Lock Earth's skies," one said. "Warn the core systems," said another. The last time the flame was touched, the stars bled, an elder muttered. "And now, a human holds it." A younger voice, colder and sharper, echoed in the room. "I told you we should have erased their planet. It's too late now. The sword has chosen. Then we must control the human before he remembers who he is." Back in the tunnels, Eli collapsed beside a glowing wall. His fingers traced symbols he had never seen, but somehow understood. Vala watched him silently, then said, "You're not just a human, Eli. You're a piece of something the universe forgot." And behind them, deeper in the shadows, something stirred. A voice, deep and ancient, rumbled through the stone. "He has returned." Hunted by the council, the ship Eli had escaped in wasn't meant for humans. The walls were alive, not with wires or buttons, but with veins of pulsing light and moving panels. Vala guided him through the corridors, like someone guiding a blind child through a storm. Eli's hand still gripped the sword, but his thoughts were scattered, heavy. His stomach ached. His skin buzzed. And worst of all, he was remembering things he had never lived. Images flashed in his head. A world made of fire. A war between beings who floated like stars. A scream in a language he didn't know, but felt in his bones. Meanwhile, on the Council's warship, Dominion Vex, 12 alien leaders gathered in a black hall shaped like a cube. Each one represented a different race. Some had no mouths, some had no faces, but all were silent. Until the Warden of Silence spoke. "He must be found," the Warden rasped, "before he learns who he truly is." "Too late," hissed the Varnic Empress. He touched the sword. "The flame is already inside him. Then we erase the source," said a voice from the shadows. "We erase Earth." A cold hush fell, and then the command came, "Send the hunters." Back in the ship, Vala stopped in front of a mirror light. "Wall, take your hand," she said. "Place it here." Eli touched the surface. It rippled like water. His reflection didn't move. It stared back with glowing eyes. "That's not me," he whispered. "It was," Vala said, "and it will be again. Can someone please explain what's happening?" He snapped, "I fix plumbing." "I don't." "Glow. I don't fight. I was just a guy." "The sword doesn't choose warriors," Vala said softly. "It chooses wounds. Yours must run deep." Suddenly, the ship trembled. The lights turned red. Alarms wailed. "They found us," Vala said, eyes wide. "Who?" "The hunters. Council assassins. They don't miss." Within seconds, the hull was breached. 3 creatures stepped inside, silent, dressed in skin-tight void armor. No faces, no names, just death. One moved like smoke, one like lightning, one like a shadow breaking reality. Eli froze. The sword shook in his grip. "Run!" Vala shouted, pushing him toward the back hatch, but Eli didn't move. He looked at the sword, glowing like a heart about to burst, and something inside him broke free. The flame didn't just burn. It remembered Dot in a blink. Eli lifted the sword, and time slowed. He saw the first hunter strike, and dodged it before it happened. He swung once, and shattered the helmet of the second, revealing nothing inside. The third melted into black smoke, but the sword sang. Chasing it like it knew where the smoke would go next, Vala stared from behind a console, speechless. Eli moved like a warrior, but he wasn't trained. It was like he had done this before, a long time ago, in a life long buried when the last hunter fell. The ship lay silent. Eli dropped the sword, breathing heavy. His arms were glowing with orange runes, alive and shifting. His eyes were golden now. His voice deeper when he spoke. I knew them," he said, shaking. "Not their faces, but their fear." Vala stepped closer. "The sword is unlocking you," she said, "not giving you power, just returning it." Eli sat down, hands shaking. "I don't want to be a god," he whispered. "You're not," she said. "You're a human, and that's why they're scared." Elsewhere, inside a dark space beyond time, the voice of a machine god whispered into the mind of the council. "You let the last ember rise. You let the human live. Now the flame is awake, and across the galaxy, a million sleeping memories inside human DNA began to stir. The past was returning. The Council's lies were breaking, and the one they feared had only just begun to remember what he truly was. The tomb of the first. Flame the ship was silent as it landed on the forgotten moon. Its surface was cracked like old glass, glowing faintly beneath layers of black ash. No wind. No life. Just the echo of something ancient. Watching, Eli stepped down first, sword in hand, its blade now dimmer, not because it was weak, but because the place itself pulsed with a stronger flame. This is where it all began, Vala whispered. The flame? Eli asked. No, she said, eyes scanning the horizon. You. Long ago, before the Council built their empire, there was a war, not between planets, but between ideas. Some believed the stars should be ruled. Others believed they should be shared. And at the center of that fight stood a weapon, forged. From the core of a dying sun, the first flame, that weapon had a guardian, a being not born of any world, but made from them all. They called him the Flame-Bearer. He was human, but the Council erased that part from the history books. Now, Eli stood above the tomb of the first flame, and the sword in his hand, the Sword of Zar'Kai, began to vibrate, not in fear, but in recognition. They reached a massive black door half buried in the dust. Vala placed her hand against it. Nothing happened. Eli stepped forward. The moment his fingertips touched the stone, it glowed red, and the entire surface began to shift like a living puzzle. The door opened, and cold light spilled out like a breath from the deep. Inside, a hallway, carved with human hands, walls covered in drawings, not of aliens or monsters, but of people, men, women, children, smiling, fighting, building. Why would these be here? Eli asked. Because they were here before us all, Vala said. Before the Council. Before the stars were mapped. Eli ran his fingers along a carving of a man holding the same sword he now held. It wasn't a warrior pose. It was gentle, protective. Who was he? You, she whispered. I'm not him, Eli muttered. Stepping away. No, Vala agreed. Not yet. At the end of the hallway was a chamber filled with floating crystals. In the center, a sarcophagus sealed in firelight. The runes on it matched those glowing on Eli's arm. This place is older than anything in Council records, Vala said, and the energy here, it's waking up. As Eli stepped forward, the crystals turned toward him like eyes. The sarcophagus split open, not with noise, but with a sigh. Inside was no body, just a suit of armor, forged from light and metal not found in any known galaxy. It was never a tomb, Eli whispered. It was a gift. The sword floated from his hand and embedded itself into the chest plate. A surge of flame shot upward. The runes on the walls lit up one by one. Suddenly, Eli's knees buckled. His vision blurred. He saw himself, standing at the edge of a battlefield. Not now, but thousands of years ago. He wore the armor. He held the sword. Behind him stood other humans, children of Earth, standing beside aliens as brothers, not enemies. The Flame-Bearer had once united. The stars, and then he saw the Council's betrayal, the blade torn from his hands, his body broken, memories erased, humanity scattered and buried under lies. He screamed as the vision ended. Smoke poured from his eyes. His veins glowed white. Vala caught him. Breathe, Eli. Breathe, she said. He gasped. I saw it all. We were heroes, and they turned us into nothing. The chamber trembled. Above ground, ships had landed. Council forces, elite hunters. They had tracked him here. Vala, Eli said, standing. Go. No, I won't leave. Go. He shouted as the armor locked onto his body and the sword returned to his grip. The door behind them exploded inward. Council soldiers rushed in. Plasma beams filled the air, but this time Eli didn't run. He raised the sword, not in anger, but with purpose, and for the first time since the beginning. The flame answered. A wave of golden fire erupted, not to destroy, but to protect. It wrapped around Vala, pushing her to safety. It melted weapons mid-air. It made the council forces stop, frozen by something older than fear, because the galaxy remembered that light, and it obeyed. Trial of the Titans, no courtroom, no trial, no chance to speak. Just cold chains and a cage of light. Eli stood at the center of a giant floating platform. The Titan arena, built not for justice, but for spectacle. Above him were 10,000. Alien eyes watching from rows that curved into the sky. Some laughed. Some whispered. Some just stared at the human who had lifted the sword of gods. High above, inside a glass throne, the Chancellor of the Galactic Council raised a hand. The creature, he said, has chosen flame. Let him now face fire. In the shadows, beneath the arena floor, enormous gates creaked open. Chains rattled. Metal groaned. Then came a sound no one had heard in centuries. A roar so deep it made stars blink. The announcer's voice echoed. First trial. The beast of Grathel, born in a sun, killer of moons. Eli's grip on the sword tightened. He had no armor, no backup, no plan. He was just a man, standing in the center of history, being fed to monsters. The floor split. And the beast rose. It stood on 6 legs. Its skin made of living magma, eyes like black holes. Its breath melted the air. It didn't wait. It charged. Eli rolled aside, barely escaping the blast. The sword hummed in his hand, not a command, not a scream, but a pulse. Steady, calm. Breathe. He stood, blade in front. The beast struck. Eli leaped, higher than he should have. He spun and slashed, the sword slicing through molten skin like paper. The beast howled and fell. The crowd was silent. Until someone clapped, then another, and then thunder, cheers from aliens, who had once hated him, because in that moment they didn't see a human. They saw a survivor, but the council didn't clap. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. Second trial, he said. Let's see if he survives himself. The next gate opened. Nothing walked out, only a cold wind. And then Eli felt something crawl inside his mind. The announcer boomed. Second trial, the worm of memory. It will make you forget who you are. It will turn you against yourself. Suddenly, Eli was no longer in the arena. He was back on Earth, but not really. He saw his mother, dying in a hospital. He saw himself begging for a job, being laughed at. He saw a life of failure, loneliness, silence. He dropped the sword, dropped to his knees. I don't belong here, he whispered. I never did. The worm slithered closer, invisible but real. Feeding on his pain, the council smiled. They had seen stronger minds break here, but then a spark. From deep inside, a voice, not a god, not the sword, but Eli himself. Get up, he whispered. No one's coming to save you. Get up anyway. And he did. He stood. Teeth clenched, fists shaking. I remember now, he said. I remember why I don't quit. The sword flew back to his hand, and the worm, a creature of thought, screamed as it was cut in half by willpower. The arena erupted in roars. Louder than before, even aliens who hated Earth cheered for the man who fought his own mind. And one. Then came the final gate. Silence again. Third trial, the announcer said softly, almost afraid. The mirror engine. Created by the ancients. It copies your strengths and doubles them. Out stepped a second Eli, but not tired, not bruised. Faster, stronger, smarter. The two locked eyes. Real Eli versus perfect Eli. They fought, blow for blow, strike for strike. The sword clashed against itself, every move mirrored, until Eli saw the truth. The perfect copy had no soul, it had no fear, but it also had no hope, no failure, no fire. I'm not strong because I'm perfect, Eli whispered, backing away. I'm strong because I've been broken. With that, he dropped his guard, just for a second, and took the hit, blood spilled. And in that moment, the sword burned brighter than ever, because pain didn't weaken him. It completed him. One final swing, and the mirror shattered. Eli stood, wounded, breathing hard, but alive, and more than that. He was believed. The chancellor stood, trying to silence the crowd. But no one listened, because in the hearts of those watching, something had changed. They no longer saw a human outsider. They saw a flame the council couldn't control, and somewhere deep in the council's vaults, a prison door cracked open, and a whisper escaped. He's ready. The betrayal of flame victory should have tasted sweet, but for Eli, it tasted. Like Ashdod, the crowd in the arena still cheered his name. Alien voices, once full of hate, now roared with awe. He had survived the trials. He had beaten the beasts. He had even defeated himself. But high above, in the council's shadows, a deal had already been made. Vala stood in the cold hallway outside the chamber of rest. She stared at her reflection in the metal wall, not at her face, but at the mark. Glowing on her wrist, a brand, an old one the council had placed on her years ago when she was a child prisoner. She had escaped, or so she thought. Now it pulsed again. Not just a memory. A command inside her ear, a small chip vibrated. The voice of the counselor whispered, "Bring us the sword, or we burn your home world." She didn't reply. She didn't cry. She just walked forward. Eli was asleep on the healing platform. The sword floated beside him, dim and resting. He looked peaceful, for once. Like someone who had just remembered how to dream, Vala stepped closer. Her fingers trembled. She reached toward the sword and touched it. The light exploded. Pain surged through her body. Visions hit her like lightning. She saw Earth. She saw Eli's memories, his childhood, his pain, his laughter, his fear. She saw him giving up, then choosing to stand again. Over and over, the sword didn't reject her, but it didn't accept her either. Still, she took it, pulled it away from Eli's side, and ran. When Eli woke, the light was gone. The sword was missing, and the room was empty. He staggered to his feet. Alarms blared overhead. Doors slammed shut. And Vala was nowhere. A voice echoed through the system. Unauthorized removal of artifact detected. Ship lockdown engaged. Eli's chest ached, but it wasn't from injury. It was something worse. Something cold. Vala? He whispered. He didn't want to believe it, but the sword wasn't there, and she was gone. Outside, Vala flew through dark space in a stolen scout pod. She clutched the sword with shaking hands. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "This isn't who I am," she said to herself. "I'm doing this to protect my people." But the sword pulsed in her grip, not with light, but with pain. It knew. It felt betrayed. Suddenly, her ship was surrounded by Black Council war drones. They opened a path, not to kill her, to welcome her. Back on the council warship, Eli stood in chains again. But this time, he didn't look weak. He didn't look afraid. He looked betrayed. "What did we tell you?" The chancellor smirked. "You're not one of them. Not even. Your friend believed in you." Eli didn't speak. His eyes stared at the stars through the glass. His fists clenched, and for the first time, no flame came. The sword was gone. But something else was growing inside him. Not a flame, not a weapon, a silence. A silence that was choosing when to roar. In a secret chamber, Vala stood before the council. She dropped the sword on the floor. "I've done what you asked. Let them go." The chancellor picked up the blade and instantly screamed. His hands burned. The sword rejected him. Guards pulled weapons. The room filled with chaos. The sword floated in the air, glowing now not golden, but red, not in anger, in warning, because a weapon without a worthy bearer becomes something else. A curse. Eli, still in chains, felt the shift in the air, felt the pulse in his chest, and then, without any sword, he stood up. The chains broke, the walls cracked, and every ship in orbit flickered. He whispered one word, "Enough." And across the fleet, the lights went out. Back in the council chamber, the sword shattered the glass dome. It flew from their hands and began to burn through the walls. Vala turned away, tears flooding her eyes. I was trying to protect him, but deep inside, she knew she had broken more than trust. She had broken the flame. Now it would choose again, and this time it wouldn't be gentle. The human that shook the stars in the dark silence between stars, where even time forgot to tick. The galaxy held its breath. No alarms rang, no ships moved. Even the stars dimmed, because something was coming, and it wasn't the sword. It wasn't the council. It wasn't flame. It was a human. Eli stood alone, floating above the warship, without armor, without weapons, just a man. A janitor. A forgotten soul who had lost everything, even the sword meant to make him powerful. But in that silence, his voice echoed. "I was never chosen," he said softly. "I was broken, rejected, betrayed, again and again. But every time I stood back up." The council war fleet surrounded him. Over 9,000 ships. Cannons charged. Artificial minds calculated the kill time, 0.003 seconds. And still, Eli didn't flinch. He walked across the vacuum of space, one step at a time. His feet left no prints, but his presence made ships shiver. Inside the council chamber, panic had become rage. "He has no sword," the chancellor shouted. "End him now." 1,000 commanders gave the order. 1,000 weapons fired. But the moment the light reached Eli, it vanished. Not deflected, not blocked, erased. The universe itself bent around him, like it remembered who he was. The man who had once stood on the edge of flame and whispered, "I will not burn." Back on Earth, children watched through holoscreens. They didn't see a warrior. They saw a man who looked like their father, their uncle, their brother, tired, bruised, but still walking, and that made them believe. Vala watched too, hiding among the crowd. She had given the sword away. She had betrayed him. And yet, he still stood, still walked. Not because he had power, but because he had purpose. She turned to the guards beside her. "Let me go," she said. "He doesn't need the sword, but I need to stand with him." And they did, not because of orders, but because their hearts demanded it. Suddenly, the sword, forgotten in the council chamber, began to scream, not in pain, but in shame. It burst through the walls, flew across space like a comet, and reached Eli. But he didn't grab it. He looked at it and whispered, "I don't need you anymore." The sword fell and turned to dust because he had become the flame. From his body rose a light that wasn't gold, or red, or blue. It was every color at once, every emotion, every memory of human pain and strength. It was grief and hope held together in a heartbeat. The light spread. Ships powered down. Weapons melted. Leaders collapsed to their knees. The council tried to run, But Eli's voice stopped them. I don't want your throne. I don't want your armies. I just want the truth returned to the stars. And then he raised his hands, not to fight, but to forgive. In that moment, every human across the galaxy felt it. Every child, every exile, every forgotten soul. They felt a fire rise in their chest. Not anger, not revenge, but remembrance of who they were, who they could be, and what had been stolen from them. The council collapsed, not by force, but by truth and from. The dust, new voices rose, voices of peace, of balance, of shared stars, not ruled, but loved. Years passed. The galaxy changed, borders faded, old wounds healed. A new symbol was carved into every world, a simple flame inside an open hand, not a weapon, a promise. Vala found Eli years later, on a quiet planet, teaching children how to grow food. She walked up, heart heavy. I'm sorry, she said. I betrayed you. Eli smiled. You returned, he said. That's all that matters. She looked at the sky. Do you miss the sword? He shook his head. No, I carry the flame now. We all do. And far beyond, in the quiet dark, a small alien girl looked up at a distant star and asked her mother, Is it true that a human saved the galaxy? Her mother smiled. No, she said. He didn't save it. He reminded it how to rise.